Knowledge, Domain 9, Lesson 3. Here are this lesson's learning targets. Our goals are: I can locate Europe, Asia, and Africa on a globe, and will recall facts about Columbus's planned route to the Indies. I can identify key facts about Columbus's first voyage to America. I can demonstrate an understanding of the word shore. I can identify the 3 ships from Columbus's voyage in 1492. Let's begin today's lesson. In today's read aloud, you will hear the following new vocabulary words. Crews. Crews are a group of people who work together. Expedition. An expedition is a journey by a group of people for a special reason. Rulers. Rulers are leaders in charge of a country or land, like kings and queens. Shore. Shore is the land at the edge of a body of water. Now, let's review what we've learned in previous lessons. Why did people from Europe want to travel to the Indies in Asia hundreds of years ago? What kinds of things were people like the families of Giovanni and Sophia seeking? People were seeking gold, beautiful cloth, and spices. Why couldn't Europeans get to Asia by traveling east on land? The land route was closed. Many European navigators suggested sailing by ship around Africa to get to the Indies. Columbus had a different idea than most navigators about getting to Asia. What was Columbus's idea? Instead of sailing around Africa, Columbus thought the best route would be sailing west from Europe to get to Asia. Columbus thought there was only ocean to the west. Remember that traveling by ship more than 500 years ago was very difficult and very expensive. Let's review what we've learned so far. During Columbus's time, who were the richest people who had enough money to pay for the ships and sailors to sail the ships? The kings and queens, or rulers of Europe, were the richest people who had enough money to pay for the ships and sailors to sail the ships. Which king and queen, who at first refused to give Columbus the money to sail, finally agreed to help him? King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain finally agreed to help Columbus. Even though Columbus now had the support of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, his idea was very difficult for anybody to believe. Listen carefully to find out how the journey into the unknown turned out. Now for today's read aloud. 1492. The year was 1492. King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, as the rulers of Spain, provided Christopher Columbus with 3 ships. They gave him money to pay for crews to sail them, plus food and water for the long voyage. Columbus was to sail his fleet westward to the Indies. There, he would trade European goods for rare spices and other treasures that the king and queen desired. Columbus's three ships had names: the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. Can you find the smallest ship in the picture? That is the Nina. The middle-sized one, the Pinta, was the fastest of the three. Columbus chose to sail on the largest ship, the 120-foot-long Santa Maria, or St. Mary. Proud of all three vessels and wanting his voyage to succeed, he was determined to choose the best sailors that he could find in all of Spain. Columbus was confident that he could attract the men he needed and convince them to go on the voyage. True, he had to paint word pictures of warm, beautiful lands where gold and rare spices were so common that a person could hardly avoid tripping over them. He suggested, without actually promising, that his crew would return to Spain so rich that they could all live in grand homes and wear fine clothes. Another thing he told them was quite true. Queen Isabella had offered a huge cash reward to the first person who sighted the Indies. Perhaps it was this offer that was the most convincing of all to the sailors. One by one, Columbus found his men, and they agreed to join his expedition. At last, everyone and everything was ready. On August 3rd, 1492, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria sailed out of their Spanish harbor, bound for a possible fortune in the Indies. The sailors were proud and excited. But when they passed the last familiar lands, the Canary Islands, and found themselves in open water, out of sight of any land, their excitement began to turn to uncertainty, and then to fear. Columbus tried to calm their fears. Both Columbus and the crew were feeling less safe the longer they sailed in the open sea. As days passed, and then weeks, Columbus's reassurance was no longer enough to keep the crew from becoming seriously frightened. Days and days and long nights passed. The Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria had been sailing westward out at sea for weeks now. They had entered a part of the ocean in which long, thick seaweeds covered the surface in every direction as far as the eye could see. This is a good sign, Columbus thought. It may mean that we're nearing land. But when the winds died down to nearly nothing and the sails hung lifelessly from the masts, the three ships crept forward and sometimes stopped moving altogether. Each day was like the one before, and Columbus and the sailors wondered, will we ever get out of this seaweed? Will the wind ever change and come back to us? At last, after days and days, the wind picked up again and they sailed free of the clinging seaweed and back into the open sea. Still, the sailors worried, and they no longer bothered to hide their doubts from Columbus. When will we find the land you promised us? They asked. Soon, he told them, trying to look confident. Soon we will get there. But as he said this, Columbus too had his own doubts. But the sailors were tired of sailing and were losing hope. They came to Columbus one day and begged him to turn the ships around. Give me 3 more days, he said. If we have not seen land by then, we will turn around. But the days passed with no signs of progress. Then, on the third day, a sailor called out, "There is something floating in the water up ahead." "Fish it out of the water," Columbus ordered. Some sailors tossed a net over the side and drew up the object. "It's a stick!" cried one of the sailors. "It looks as if someone has carved its sides with a knife." "That must mean land is ahead, and someone is living there," the others said excitedly. The next day, several sailors saw branches with green leaves floating on the surface of the water. Then the crews of all three ships saw a large flock of land birds flying overhead. "We must be getting close to land," the men cried with great excitement. The birds circled above as if examining the three ships, then turned back in the direction from which they had come. "Follow them," Columbus ordered. "The birds will lead us to land." Soon the salty sea breezes began to carry a new scent their way. "Could we be smelling the spices of Asia up ahead?" the sailors asked one another, growing more and more excited. But still they saw no land. On the evening of Thursday, October 11th, Columbus ordered the ships to drop anchor, something that they have not done the entire voyage. "If we really are close to land," he thought, "we might be carried by the current up against the shore in the darkness and never know until it's too late." That night, walking the deck of the Santa Maria, he saw a light in the distance. "It is too far away to be coming from the Pinta," he thought, knowing that the ship was anchored farther ahead of his own. "And the light is too low in the sky to be a star. It must be a fire set by some human being on the shore up ahead." A few hours later, in the early morning hours of October 12th, 1492, Columbus heard the sound of a cannon. "It is coming from the Pinta," he thought. "They must have sighted land." Waiting impatiently as the early light of dawn increased, he stared ahead until he saw what the sailors on board the Pinta had seen: a long, low shore on which the ocean waves were smoothly breaking. The men of the Pinta were cheering, and a moment later cheering broke out aboard the Nina and the Santa Maria too. Dressing formally for the occasion and carrying a long flagpole bearing the flag of Spain, Columbus and some of his men rowed over the waves in a small boat to the shore of this new land. Stepping out into the water, Columbus and the sailors stepped ashore. By his calculations, Columbus believed he had landed on the continent of Asia in the Indies. Then he plunged the flagpole into the sandy shore and said, "On behalf of their majesties, I, Christopher Columbus, claim this land and all that is in it for Spain." Now, let's answer some questions about today's read aloud. In what year did Christopher Columbus sail on his first voyage? 1492. The rulers of Spain, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, provided Columbus with three ships. What were their names? Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria. On which ship did Columbus travel? Santa Maria. What five signs did Columbus and his crew see that made them think they were getting close to land? They saw seaweed, a carved stick, branches with leaves, land birds, and light in the distance. On which continent and in which place did Columbus think he had landed? Columbus thought that he had landed in the Indies on the continent of Asia. When Columbus landed and thought he was in the Indies, he put the Spanish flag in the sand and said the land would now belong to Spain. Why did he do that? Columbus did that to show that he had claimed the land that he arrived on for Spain. To Columbus and his crew, this meant that anything they found on the land was theirs and could be taken and brought back to Spain. What did Columbus hope to find in the Indies to bring back to Spain? He hoped to find spices and treasures among other things. Why do you think the author titled this read aloud 1492? The author titled the read aloud 1492 because that is the year that Columbus began his sail westward. Was 1492 a long time ago or not so long ago? It was a long time ago, as it was more than 500 years ago. Now it's time for some word work. In the read aloud, you heard, "It must be a fire set by some human being on the shore up ahead." Say the word shore with me. Shore. A shore is the land at the edge of a body of water. If you are swimming in the ocean and you want to get out of the water onto the sand, you swim toward the shore. Tell me about a time when you saw a shore in a book or in real life. Use the word shore when you tell about it. I once saw a shore when. What's the word we've been talking about? Shore. Now, I am going to name an activity that a person might do. If this is an activity you would do at a shore, show a thumbs up and say, "That is a good activity to do on a shore." If it is not an activity you could do at a shore, say, "That is not an activity you could do on a shore," and show a thumbs down. Ready? Making sand castles on the beach. That is a good activity to do on a shore. Using finger paints and paper to make a picture. That is not an activity that you do on a shore. Standing on the sand, throwing pebbles or shells into the water. That is a good activity to do on a shore. Running away from waves and back to land. That is a good activity to do on a shore. Building a snowman. That is not an activity that you do on a shore. Please answer the following question. What were the names of the 3 ships on Columbus's voyage? The Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. Now it's time to show what you've learned. On a sheet of paper, draw a picture of the 3 ships that sailed on Columbus's voyage. You may label the ships with their names. That's our knowledge lesson for today. Let's review the learning targets of this lesson. Our goals are: I can locate Europe, Asia, and Africa on a globe, and will recall facts about Columbus's planned route to the Indies. I can identify key facts about Columbus's first voyage to America. I can demonstrate an understanding of the word shore. I can identify the 3 ships from Columbus's voyage in 1492. Happy learning!